Hey Fruit Faces, it's Clary Berry, and I'm doing more studies this year that have to do with anthropology, and somewhat occasionally nutrition will pop up just because the whole Paleolithic, ideas. And I just want to continue to reiterate to you guys that every anthropology class I take, every nutrition class I take, it all leads to veganism as the best way to eat. It really does. It backs up my beliefs, which is funny because my mom thought it would steer me away from veganism. I don't know why, but she really hates my veganism. I don't know why. But anyway, that's beside the point. What I want to do with you here is just share with you the latest evidence in my textbooks that pretty much prove to me, validate my beliefs that veganism is number one, paleo sucks. So, and really breaks a lot of the stereotypes that people hold about paleo. If you want to learn more about this, I've got numerous videos. I've got a whole playlist on it, so go check that out here on YouTube. If you don't know how, then leave me a comment below and I'll kind of guide you through that. But yeah, it's really important to kind of make sure that your beliefs are consistent across the board, and paleo is one of those things that's not consistent at all. So let me start out just by saying that everybody thinks that paleo people ate tons of meat, tons of fat, and I've discussed this before, again, how the meat that they were eating, if they were eating meat, was much less fat in general, but the newer research is showing that they did not eat as much meat as people thought. The reason for this is that when they first were finding all the evidence, they were only finding animal bones. So they automatically thought that that's what they were eating and that's only what they were eating. But as the science has caught up to the anthropological field, they're starting to realize that not only were they eating a lot more amounts of vegetables, but they were eating starches, they were eating cereal grasses, and they were eating greens. So let's check it out. From my history book, World History. Paleo peoples have often been called hunter-gatherers, but recent archaeological and anthropological research indicates that both historical and contemporary hunter-gatherers have depended much more on gathered foods than on hunted meat. Thus, it would be more accurate to call them gatherer-hunters. And most scholars now call them foragers, a term that highlights the flexibility and adaptability in their search for food. Most of what foragers ate were plants, and much of the animal protein in their diet came from foods gathered or scavenged rather than hunted directly. Insects, shellfish, small animal caught in traps, fish, etc. So again, the consistency of fish and fish back then is way obviously different than fish now, with the amounts of pollution and everything in the world, radiation. There's so much stuff floating around. It's ridiculous. And not only that, but the economical, the ecological difference was just night and day. Now it's not sustainable when we have, 9, 10, 11 billion people in the world to keep on fishing the oceans like we do, which, how many pounds for each pound of fish is caught is actually killed. And it's just, we're going to have fishless oceans if everybody keeps on eating the fish. So that's besides the point. The point is that the insects actually have way more, protein and nutrients per pound than, say, does beef. Beef has a lot more fat. There's virtually no fat in these insects and stuff that they would have eaten. So it's night and day. If you really truly are going to be paleo, you need to give up dairy, because there's no dairy in Paleolithic times. Okay, they did not have animal domestication. That was part of the whole deal, and they weren't eating a large percentage of fat. So it just kind of flies in the face of basically everything that paleo is and think that they are. And the quantities again are going to be very small. I've talked about this in other videos. Until the later periods, the later Paleolithic times, they weren't able to catch big game on a very steady basis at all. So now we're talking about hunter-gatherers and how long it takes them to, to do their jobs and get food. It says that other than in times of environmental disasters, people only needed about 10 to 20 hours a week to gather food and carry out a great deal of other tasks needed to survive, such as locating water and building shelters. The diet of foragers is varied and nutritious, low in fat and salt, high in fiber, and rich in vitamins and minerals. The slow pace of life and healthy diet did not mean Paleolithic lifespans approached those of the modern world, however, because they got killed It says they didn't have heart disease and diabetes, but they died from injuries, infections, animal attack, and interpersonal violence. So again, this really flies in the face of what a lot of people, even anthropologists, tend to think, because a lot of anthropologists were educated in a time where this evidence was not as is not put out there. And, their textbooks didn't say this. So they, even if they're reading new research, they still have, it's hard to really replace old ideas with new ones. It's just harder to do that. So many anthropologists still think in the paleo way, because what happens is once the agricultural revolution comes around, the Neolithic period, we start to see a lot more disease, because this way of life where you had people in this non-stress, lifestyle, that kind of goes away, because tending to farms takes a lot more time. It's a lot more stressful. People are wearing themselves into the ground like that. They're eating a much less varied diet. So in the past, people have looked at that and said, oh, well, diet of meat, because they thought the Paleolithic people were eating meat and maybe a little bit of veggies. They think that, this paleo diet is great, and that cereal grains and whatnot that were coming around, supposedly around the time of the Neolithic, age of agricultural revolution, those are bad because there was a decline in health around those times. However, again, we need to really make sure that, your premise is correct. And as we can see, it's not. It wasn't going from a bunch of meat eating to, a bunch of grain eating, because here's the deal. They were collecting cereal. Just because they weren't planting them doesn't mean they weren't eating them. They were eating them for thousands of years, you guys. They didn't just all of a sudden, start to have these. There was a little bit better conditions and weather so that the cereal grasses were, thriving a little bit better, but they were definitely collecting cereal grains throughout the Paleolithic era. And same thing with beans and stuff is in there as well, and tubers and shoots and different things that do have starches and carbs in them. So Paleolithic people were eating a wide variety of these types of foods, and the variety is also really important there, because once the Neolithic age came, people were just relying on certain foods. So they were having a lot of nutritional deficiencies as well. So it wasn't just meat starches like people want to think. You need to know the facts if you're going to, put your health at risk by following a diet that is completely, just a fabrication and a manipulation of, this old historical, stuff. And it's just misguided. It's completely misguided. So now we're up to talking about the agricultural revolution. Talks about 9,000 BC, people began to plant the seeds of the wheat, the barley that they'd been harvesting, along with beans, legumes, peas, and flax. They modified these crops. By about 8,000 BC, people were growing sorghum and millet around the Nile, and yams in Western Africa. By about 7,000 BCE, they were growing rice, millet, and legumes in China, yams in Papua New Guinea, and perhaps squash in Mesoamerica. So here are some other ideas, like less breastfeeding and things that help to explain the decline of the health in the Neolithic era. And it's not all just that we went from meat to starches. This part talks about the domestication of animals, probably happens around the same time, but we don't even really know when they started using their milk. And keep in mind, we may have supposedly domesticated cereal grains and animals for milk around the same period of time. However, we had been eating legumes and cereal grasses for thousands and thousands of years prior to the domestication of animals. So if you're going to eat anything, it should be grains as opposed to milk. And just as a reminder, I had to throw in this part about how bad sustaining 1.5 billion cattle is for the environment. It says it right here in a history book. The reason why health declined was actually because of the meat domestication, which meant that they were actually able to eat more meat and more fat from dairy. And so also the contact with animals definitely affected our health in a very negative way. we were able to eat meat all year round, so our health naturally declined. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Hope you've learned a little bit. Maybe share with your paleo friends so they can just learn how nonsensical and, you know, ridiculous, honestly, paleo is. It's based on concepts that are completely untrue. It ignores other concepts. It just really needs some more critiquing in this world. And I share this in hopes that people will get healthier, go in for, again, for not just for your health, but for the environment and for the animals as well. What more can I say? Give me a thumbs up if you like this. Don't forget to stay subbed and don't forget to eat your fruit. Talk to you guys later.